Hi. Welcome to Spoiler Lab. In a small town, unknown assailants destroy entire families of settlers. Mysterious pits are left at the scene of the crimes and the locals are shocked when they find out where this maelstrom in the ground leads. Today we will recap the story of the 2008 movie The Burrowers. Irish immigrant pioneer Fergus falls in love during his travels with Mary Sparks, a resident of one of the settlements. At night trouble comes to her family. Unknown assailants attack her village and the father tells his wife and 4 children to hide in the basement. Holding their breath, the family hears gunfire from above. The sounds of fighting are soon replaced by desperate screams. The terrified family notices something crawling across the floorboards above. They freeze, hoping they won't be found, but something bursts in and attacks the people in hiding. The next day, Fergus arrives at his beloved's house, but finds no one there. He enters the house of their neighbors, the Williams, and finds their bodies inside. Fergus does not give up hope of finding the Stewart family, for they may have become prisoners of the militant Indians. The immigrant decides to form a squad of volunteers to search for the missing people. William Parcher is eating in the backyard of the house with his wife and her teenage son, Dobie. Seeing a horseman in the distance, the cowboy tells the boy to take his mother into the house, for the intruder may be an enemy. The horseman turns out to be Fergus, who delivers a message from the governor. He says that the Indians have destroyed the Williams family and kidnapped the Stewart family. William plans to join a squad of volunteers. Dobie's mother insists that her son also go on the search. She is confident that this journey will help him become a real man. Examining the scene, William notices deep cuts on the victims' necks. He is surprised that the girls have oozed too little red fluid from such wounds. He is also at a loss as to what could have caused such injuries. Dobie notices the shotgun in the hand of the lifeless Mr. Williams. William is sure that the father of the family intended to finish off the women himself so that they would not be captured by the Indians. Meanwhile, Fergus finds a strange hole in the yard. Volunteers from all the ranches in the county gather at the settlement. Administrator John Clay, Freedman Walnut, and an Indian who is sided with the whites. An arrogant officer, Henry Victor, along with the cavalry, takes command of the troops. He is convinced that the chances of saving the Stewart family are minimal. The group of courageous men bury the Williams family and head for the Indian lands. John Clay is sure they won't find the missing family on peaceful Indian lands, but without Henry Victor's men, they cannot handle Utah's hostile tribe. Suddenly William's horse gets stuck in the freshly dug ground and falls over. After a brief pause, the travelers ride on, not noticing that someone's body is buried in the ground. Henry Victor spots a young Indian from the reservation ahead and shoots his horse to keep him from getting far away. His men mount a manhunt on the lad and eventually catch up with him. William politely interrogates the prisoner and shows him a picture of the missing Stewart family. The Indian remains silent, but Henry Victor has no intention of putting up with it. Throughout the night, his men mercilessly torture the prisoner, waiting for him to give him the information he needs. The other volunteers are stunned by the officer's cruelty and disapprove of his methods. However, Henry Victor takes pleasure in taunting the Indians and brags to the assembled a fragment of one of them. Young Dobie looks at the man with respect and admits that his father was killed in a battle with the Indians. Fergus and Walnut quickly find common ground and share stories from their lives. Walnut works for Henry as a cook, but is free to leave him at any time. Fergus came to the Dakotas right after New York because he couldn't find work anywhere because of his ethnicity. He emigrated with his sister, but she died on the way from tuberculosis. The only thing left of her memory is a brooch, which the lad gave to Marianne when he proposed to her. The prisoner is finally left alone, and Walnut decides to bring him food discreetly. An enraged Henry Victor notices this and is about to punish his cook, but Fergus takes charge. Conflict arises between the men, but William manages to calm the officer. For the night, Henry leaves a patrol of 3 men who will have to watch what is happening and shoot anyone who approaches their camp. One of the sentries notices a suspicious movement in the field and goes to scout. He finds his comrade's lifeless body in the bushes next to a bottle of liquor, and decides that he is simply dead drunk. The next second, however, the officer is attacked by an unknown creature. In the morning, Fergus wakes up to Henry Victor swearing. During the night, 4 of his men are missing from the camp. The men interrogate the captive Indian, and he is delighted that the white men have become a favorite of the Burrowers. He does not explain who they are, but assures the assembled men that they will find each of them themselves. The Indian interpreter from Henry's team begins interrogating the prisoner again, but is stopped by William. Because of this, the tension between the volunteers reaches its peak. Dobie notices several holes in the ground near the camp, the same ones they saw earlier near the Stewart settlement. Williams, Dobie, Fergus, and John decide to separate from Henry Victor's team and search for the missing on their own. At night, the travelers stop for a rest and discuss their next plan of action. Neither of them has heard of the Burrower tribe before and so far, they have no leads. John is the first to join the night watch. Hearing a suspicious noise, He nearly shoots Walnut, who has decided to escape from Henry Victor and join John Clay's crew. In the morning, the group set off further to explore the area in search of clues. Along the way, they stumble upon fresh holes over and over. Soon they find an empty wagon in the middle of the road, and this find raises even more questions for them. All the valuables are left in the wagon, but the horse and riders have disappeared without a trace. It doesn't look like an ordinary robbery. The team stops for a short break to catch their breath. Dobie and Walnut throw pebbles into the nearest tree to amuse themselves. The boy decides to walk around looking for more rocks, but instead finds a clump of blonde hair sticking out of the ground. Everyone else runs to his frightened cry. After shaking off the earth, they find the body of a girl with her eyes open. Her pupils dilate from the bright light. She can see and hear the people in front of her. The travelers notice a deep wound on her neck, from which white bubbles rise. Suddenly they hear something scratching inside her shoe. They remove the girl's shoe and are horrified to find that she is moving her toes. The dumbfounded men cannot understand why the Indians buried her alive. Fergus fears that the same fate has befallen his bride. In the morning, the team tells Dobie to take the girl to the nearest settlement for examination. William tries diligently to please his lover's son and says he wouldn't trust this mission to anyone else. Fergus tries unsuccessfully to close the poor girl's eyes. Eventually he covers her face with a hat. The remaining travelers continue their search for the Stewart family and go deep into the woods. It is alarmingly quiet around them. They notice movement among the trees and realize that they have been spotted by Indians. One of them raises his hand up in greeting and Fergus shoots him, mistakenly thinking he is going to attack. John angrily shoves the immigrant off his horse and is kicked by Walnut's horse. The Indian sends a signal to his tribesmen and John realizes that his team is now in danger. Meanwhile, Dobie and the paralyzed girl stop for a break. The boy carefully lays her on the ground beside him and kisses her on the lips. She begins to wiggle her fingers again and the boy is startled to realize that the girl is still awake. As they make their way through the woods, William and John discuss how they will get rid of Fergus's company. The Indian who was frightened away by the Irishman may have known something about the Stewart family. Despite his mistake, Fergus does not give up hope that his beloved is still alive. He insists on continuing his search. His mistake, however, does not go unpunished. Hostile Indians surround the team and shoot John in the neck. Walnut's horse becomes the next victim and he crushes his rider with it. William and Fergus shoot back at their attackers, but they deftly maneuver among the trees. The Irishman pulls Walnut from under his horse and the remaining travelers hide behind the animal. At night Dobie can't sleep and thinks about the motionless girl beside him. Suddenly a gray creature attacks him, leaving a deep cut on his neck. It spits a strange liquid on the fresh wound, after which white bubbles appear on it. The boy is immediately paralyzed and silently watches as the monster drags him behind it in an unknown direction. When it stops, it begins to bury Dobie alive in the ground. Like the girl, he continues to breathe and desperately tries to move a finger on his hand. The three travelers continue to hide behind the horse, fearing another attack by the furious Indians. William notices some sumac bushes around and tells his companions to gather more plants and then set them on fire. Walnut tells them that the smoke from the plants is poisonous and can seriously harm the Indians. However, the team is left with no other choice. They must break away from their pursuers and continue their search for the Stewarts. Fergus makes a homemade cross to mark the spot where John died. William tells them to abandon this venture, for that way the Indians can find the white man's corpse and abuse it. The exhausted men continue their journey through uncharted terrain. At night by the campfire, William again reflects on his fallen comrade with sadness. Fergus is concerned about the brutality of the Indians and asks his companion if white men have ever managed to rescue women from Indian captivity. Unfortunately, William cannot get the Irishman's hopes up. More often than not, the captives were found already dead. Only once did a woman manage to escape captivity alive, but on her return she went mad. William is the first to join the night watch. Waking up to strange sounds, Fergus discovers that his comrades are missing. The sounds grow closer and the man grabs his gun in terror, ready to fire at any moment. Walnut, who had been out looking for William, returns to the campfire. The companions notice that the flames of the fire shine brighter than usual. They decide that Parcher is purposely using them as bait to attract the Indians who kidnapped the Stewarts. Somewhere nearby, William shrieks and the sound of gunshots are heard. The men find their frightened fellow on the ground, where he is desperately trying to fight someone off. Pointing a torch at the ground, they spot ugly gray creatures with huge mouths and countless fangs. Walnut shoots at them, but they manage to hide underground. William shows his comrades the cut on his neck that the creatures awarded him with. Gradually, the man loses sensation in his limbs. The man is convinced that it was all an Indian trick. The travelers are forced to continue driving in the middle of the night so as not to become a meal for the monsters. William asks Fergus to give Dobie's mother the cross in case he fails to survive the journey. The trio notice a fire ahead and move cautiously toward it. Near the fire they meet a Native American girl and tell her they come in peace. The girl immediately notices a cut on Parcher's neck and tells him that the burrowers will come back for him. The man deliberately mistranslates the stranger's words for his comrades so that they will not get rid of him because of the impending danger. The girl reveals that the burrowers have destroyed her family. She had to shoot her husband with the same wound on his neck so that he would not go away in agony. She tells the travelers the story of the burrowers. They are the real natives of this area and have lived here long before the first Indians. They used to hunt buffalo to satisfy their hunger. After poisoning their prey, they buried it so it would decompose. Using poison, they buried their victims alive. When the blood of their victims thickens and their organs become soft, the critters return and devour them. The first settlers exterminated all the bison, so the burrowers switched to humans. The Utah tribe has already fought the critters, but they won't help white people. The girl is sure that William will soon die because of the burrowers' poison, but he withholds this information from his comrades. They take the Indian girl hostage and head off in search of the Utah tribe to find a potion for the monster's poison. Along the way, William begins laughing hysterically. Walnut doubts that they should risk their lives to save a walking dead man. But Fergus pursues his goal. He still hopes the Utah tribe will help him find Mary Ann. The Indian notices that William's wound is covered with a rash and now it will be easier for the burrowers to find him. Parcher tells the crew to stop near a flagpole to give the Indians a chance to find them. The captive woman protests and says that they must not stop for the night or they will all be killed by the burrowers. William again deliberately fails to translate her words. Fergus wakes up in the middle of the night because of nightmares. By then William is almost completely paralyzed and has trouble speaking. He manages to warn the Irishmen that the burrowers are approaching and the travelers begin to shoot back at them. Due to poor coordination, Parcher accidentally wounds Walnut in the leg. The Indian desperately tries to convey to Fergus and Walnut that they need to keep moving and not stop. William's fate is already sealed and they must leave him behind. The travelers realize that Parcher is hiding something from them and no longer intend to tolerate his manipulation. William tries to stop them with a shot, but he runs out of ammunition. He begs his comrades to remain where they are, but they tie him to the saddle and ride on. Walnut's wound bleeds red liquid, which may also attract the burrowers. But a new danger appears before the travelers, 2 men from the Utah tribe. Walnut asks his comrade to drop him and grab his rifle so he can shoot his enemies. They declare, however, that they have come in peace and the travelers are in no danger. In broken French, Fergus tells the strangers about the missing white family that was kidnapped by the burrowers. The Indians notice William's injury and tell the travelers that they use the sick men as small fish for bait. Fergus's French knowledge is not so good and he does not understand what the men are saying. Parcher quickly understands what is going on and tells his comrades to shoot the Indians. They decide not to risk their lives and let the Utah men take the dying William. Fergus finds a belt on the ground that the Indians have dropped. On it they clasp trophy items belonging to the men they used as bait. He notices Mary Ann's brooch on it and realizes that his beloved is already dead. The wounded Walnut wants to go home. For now their search is meaningless. Fergus decides to go after Parcher and his captors. He must find a way to destroy the burrowers before they destroy the other families. Fergus follows the trail through the woods, listening for suspicious sounds. From behind the trees, one of the Indians pounces on him, but the man fires a shotgun at him. He hears William's cries for help and runs at the sound of his voice. The paralyzed captive is tied to a tree in the middle of the woods. The gnashing sounds around him make it clear that the burrowers are close. The man tells his rescuer about the strange drink the Indians forced him to drink. As Fergus tries to free William from the ropes, the man snatches a revolver from his holster and accidentally shoots him in the shoulder. His second shot hits the target and wounds the Indian behind his companion. In pain, Fergus begins to back away and hits the trap with his foot. Whimpering in pain, he tries to free himself from the shackles, but the contraption holds his leg in place. At this point, the burrowers hunt William down and surround their prey on all sides. The victim shoots indiscriminately in the air, trying to fight off the monsters, but it is too late. Several hungry predators pounce on the man, devouring him piece by piece until his screams are completely silenced. One of the burrowers smells a wounded Fergus and begins to crawl toward him. The man crawls backwards and almost hit another trap set with his hand. He throws the trap at the monster, and finally frees himself from the shackles. Another predator follows in the footsteps of the wounded. The Indian points his spear at Fergus and he pierces the monster several times with it. Looking around, the Irishman notices that the other burrowers are lying motionless on the ground. The cunning Indians have dosed the bait with a toxin and poisoned the monsters. Fergus takes the spears prepared by the Indians and uses them to nail the other burrowers to the ground. Another burrower comes out of the ground. Out of surprise, Fergus falls backwards and gets his hand stuck in William's ribcage. He tries to fight the predator, but it is much stronger than him and easily breaks the spear. The man notices in the body of his dead comrade the cross, soaked with the sleeping drug from its entrails. He stabs the monster with it, then thrusts his spear into it. Fergus stabs the burrowers again and again with his spear, but they do not die from it. Completely exhausted, he informs the exhausted Indian that their plan has not worked. Taking advantage of the predator's immobility, Fergus tries to take William's body with him. But his comrade is so mutilated that the man succeeds in taking only his leg. He weeps, aware of the hell he has been through that night. It is dawn and Fergus hears the pitiful whimpering of the burrowers. The monsters burn in the sunlight. The man realizes that the Utah men's cruel plan has succeeded. Fergus brings the Indian to Walnut and the girl, who also managed to survive the night. He tells his comrade about what happened during the night and about the narcotic with which William's body was drugged. The wounded Indian must not be allowed to pass away, or the secret composition of the toxic drink will go with him. Fergus goes to the nearest settlement to fetch a doctor and leaves Walnut and the Indian to keep an eye on the wounded man. On the way, he finds his hat, but fails to notice Dobie buried in the ground nearby. He finally reaches the doctor and returns with him to the camp. There he catches a horrifying sight. Henry Victor's cavalry has reached the place before him. The Indians have been executed and hanged. The officer warmly greets his old acquaintance and boasts of his accomplishments. Having discovered William's body, Henry Victor's men were given the green light to destroy the Utah tribe. They got rid of Walnut as well, making up a false version that he died while amputating a wounded leg. Fergus leaves the camp in utter despair. He realizes that Henry Victor's men will exterminate and drive all Indians from Dakota lands. The chance to find an antidote against the burrowers is lost and all the settlers are in danger. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you liked the video please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.